There are apparently U.S. hostages still on the ground in Gaza, taken and held by Hamas. Congressman, what do you think the Americans need to do in response to that?
Well, that's an incredibly tough question, Ian, and Hamas knows that, and that's why these terrorist organizations deliberately take hostages. I think, frankly, the best hope would be an intermediary like Egypt, who has been a traditional negotiator between Hamas and Israel and, frankly, the international community. It's not just Americans that are held hostage. My understanding is it's literally dozens of countries. So I hope that's actually leverage for support for Israel and support for aggressive action against Gaza or against Hamas. And not the other way around, that some of these countries begin backing away for, frankly, support for Israel doing what it needs to do to secure itself because of the hostages, if that makes sense. But either way, they are going to be a major, major leverage point.
That's right, Mike. There are over 20 countries who have civilians that are presently being held captive by Hamas in Gaza. And so what I hear you saying is that the Americans should, at least to start, use countries in the region they have better relations with, like Egypt, to act as intermediaries with Hamas. Of course, Hamas leadership, we know where they are. They're not in Gaza. They're actually in Qatar. So you would favor that level of direct diplomacy?
Well, look, I could just tell you as a former Green Beret that a hostage rescue successful down in the tunnels where it is incredibly difficult to intercept any type of communications, GPS doesn't work. I mean, there is a reason Hamas has built this massive tunnel network. It's incredibly difficult to get to. They will constantly be moving them around. I mean, this is just a Gordian knot in terms of trying to get these folks militarily. So at the end of the day, we have, we have historic intermediaries. I have my issue with Qatar. I have my issue with essentially providing sanctuary to a terrorist organization. I'll remind everyone, Hamas and Hezbollah are designated foreign terrorist organizations in the same category in U.S. law as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So I do have real issue with some of our allies providing that support, but at the same time, you got to do what you need to do to save American lives.
If you could be offering the Prime Minister of Israel, the government of Israel, advice at this precipitous moment on how to respond militarily for the short and the long term, what would you say?
Well, look, let's go to the lessons from 9/11 and the subsequent wars. We thought through the military operation, but we didn't think through how to win the peace. So what I would be advising both the Prime Minister and his military staff is, you completely degrade Hamas, you take down their leadership, you kill a number of their fighters, and then what? What is that aftermath, and how do you prevent that void from being filled again? I don't think the Israeli government wants to reoccupy Gaza. So are we talking some type of UN peacekeeping operation? Do we get the Gulf Arab states to step in some way, despite the fact that they historically have not wanted to? But that's the part you have to think through in that lesson. But Ian, there's another lesson to learn from the Middle East wars post 9/11, in that a terrorist organization that enjoys state sponsorship, a terrorist organization that enjoys sanctuary, right now Hamas absolutely is funded, trained, and equipped by Iran. It's the head of the snake that you have to ultimately go after, or at least dry up the funding. One of the metrics that I always watched under the maximum pressure campaign under the Trump administration was the fact that Hezbollah, the militias in Iraq, Hamas, and others were all universally complaining that they weren't getting the money that they used to, that the funds had dried up, that their coffers were dry, that they couldn't pay their fighters in Syria and elsewhere. So that's another lesson that we have to learn. And then in terms of maybe a model is how we degraded ISIS to the point of where irrelevancy from a military standpoint in Syria. We did it through local partners. We did it through precision strikes. We didn't, the United States, necessarily invade and occupy portions of Syria, but we did it through different types of military techniques, and that's what I would be advising them to look at as a model.